2398 acres.
Yes, sir. Good morning. This morning we have a land use and a rezoning request. We have to have two motions, one for a land use, one for a rezoning. The first one is notice of land use change. It's a consideration of a request for a land use change of a 23.98 acre parcel lying in section 25, township 6 South, range 4 West, Carabel, Franklin County, Florida, from agriculture to residential. Request submitted by Al Byrne. He's the applicant. The
From
ag-
agriculture to rural residential,
Rural residential, yes, sir.
1 to 10.
1 to 10.
1 to 10.
Yes, sir.
What's it for what now?
The density is 1 to 10, so on those 23 acres, you get 2 houses.
Okay. And everybody went,
Yes.
okay, so moved.
Got a motion on the floor
We need
by
public comment.
public comment. Any public comment on it? Any public comment on this? There's no public comment, pledge of the board.
Mr. Chairman, legal advice to follow up on what Ms. Amy said. The board, if you're willing to approve this, you would have a motion first to approve the change of the land use from agricultural to rural residential. And if that motion passes, there would then be a motion to rezone the property from agricultural to rural residential.
Okay, we got to have two motions, so.
Yes,
We
sir.
made a motion on the
First one.
Okay.
second.
I got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Masters, second by Commissioner Parrish. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That part passed unanimous. Now we need a motion on the second part.
Yes, sir. We have a notice of rezoning. It's a
Yeah,
consideration of a
rezone.
request for a rezone of a 23.9 acre parcel lying in section 25, township 6 South, range 4 West, Carabel, Franklin County, Florida, from A2 forestry agriculture to R6 rural residential. Request submitted by Al Byrne, applicant. It's the same piece of property. This is just going from 1 unit per 40 acres to 1 unit per 10 acres.
You have to call for public comment once again, Mr. Chairman.
Public comment? Any public comment? Pledge of the vote.
So moved.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Masters, second by Commissioner Jones. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That passed unanimous. Okay, that end the public hearing. Now we have, next on the agenda be Ms. Amy Kelly, Advisory Board of Adjustment.
Oops, I'm sorry. Still learning this new computer.
And, Mr. Chairman, with regard to this particular recommendation we're coming up with now, if I'm looking at that correctly, I probably should not vote on this because it's a neighborly property right within, 100 yards of where I live, so just, that's not negative, I just think that's ethical not to be involved in this one.
Mr.
I'm sorry, well, you're related to the
No,
applicant?
I live
Commissioner Rowland?
within 100 yards of this property, or less.
I mean, Commissioner, I think that unless there's some other factual basis for recusing yourself, I don't think you
Okay.
could or should recuse yourself in this matter. I think
Okay.
you're in compliance with Florida statutes governing commissioner ethics. This is not a family member.
Right.
This is not an employer of yours, is it?
No.
This, okay. So you're completely unrelated to this applicant
no.
on all levels?
Only that he would be a neighbor within.
Right. Well, it's a
Couple
small
of
county,
lots.
we're gonna make decisions, and you are about neighbors all the time,
Okay.
but I don't think there's a factual basis that would
Okay.
require you to recuse yourself, Commissioner.
Good morning.
Can I ask a question real quick, Mr. Chairman? You got this down as a consent agenda item, and reading through it, I see where there's like 9 different parcels here, or applications. Is this due to the hurricane? And the
Yes, sir.
erosion that was caused by Hurricane Michael? This reason we're having all these applications for these vinyl seawalls and riprap and,
Yes, sir. Especially the first two, and then the septic tank issues. There was some erosion, pretty much erosion from Hurricane Michael for all of them. Some were worse than others.
that was the only question I
Okay.
had. I mean, it's gonna take a while to go through these 9 different items, but
Okay.
I guess there's really no way to
Can you,
approve them all at one time, so we'll begin with number 1.
Okay. We have a recommendation for approval. It was unanimous. It was a consideration of a request to construct a 6-foot by 75-foot vinyl and concrete seawall, 50 feet from the mean high water and 10 feet into both side setbacks, with approximately 180 cubic yards of fill landward of the property line in Section 5, Township 7 South, Range 1 West, 1223 Alligator Drive, Alligator Point, Franklin County, Florida. Request submitted by Roger Krausen, agent for Robert and Lisa Zabrowski.
pleasure of the board.
Mr. Burt,
Yes,
most all these properties are in your area,
yes, sir.
so we're looking to you, how you feel about it, and we need to, what's your recommendation? You live in
Sure.
this area, as you previously stated,
Okay,
but we need to move along. We don't need to discuss outright every little detail of what's happening, but if you're in
And-
favor of it, we need to know that, and if you're not, then the board's gonna proceed.
yeah, since I've had the clearance to proceed, I've done study on these, and I would so move to approve this particular application.
Okay.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Burt, second by Commissioner Parrish. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, number
All
2,
opposed?
we have a,
Huh?
I'm sorry.
Any opposed? That passed unanimous.
Mhm.
Do you, Commissioner Burt,
Yes, sir.
is you against any of these?
No, I've done the study of each one of these, and they appear to be well thought out, and I know the problem that the folks are facing in this area, so I feel comfortable in approving each one.
Or will it be all right if we bundle each one of these up and just approve all of them? Or you want us to go through?
The board did away with its consent agenda policy quite some time ago, so Commissioner, I'm afraid based on your current policy, although the agenda is long, you would have to take it item by item, but I'm sure Ms. Amy can
Okay.
Okay, we'll
No
press
problem,
streamline
no
that
problem.
as much as she's able to.
Okay.
Go
Okay.
ahead, Ms. Amy.
Number 2, we have a recommendation for approval, unanimous, consideration of a request to construct a 5-foot by 90-foot vinyl and concrete seawall 60 feet from the mean high water, 10 feet into both side setbacks with approximately 80 cubic yards of fill landward on the property described as Lot 34, Pinpoint, Unit 7, 1035, Gulf Shore Boulevard, Alligator Point. Request submitted by Roger Krausen, agent for Matthew Zalumis.
Pleasure of the board.
So moved.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Parrish, second by Commissioner Jones. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That passed unanimous.
Okay. Number 3, we have a recommendation for approval, unanimous. Consideration of a request for a 25-foot variance from the well to septic tank to meet the minimum state requirements. The property is described as Lot 22, Dog Island subdivision, Unit 1, unrecorded, 858 Gulf Shore Drive, Dog Island, Franklin County, Florida. Request submitted by Randy Cannon, agent for John and Jennifer Butel.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Masters, second by Commissioner Byrd.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That passed unanimous.
Okay, number 4,
Mr. Chairman, if I
recommendation
may.
for,
Just for the record, for all of these setbacks for the variances from the septic tank to the well, we need to get the factual basis in the record that the reason for the variance is Hurricane Michael damage to each one of the applicants for this variance. I mean, y'all all know that, but it needs to be on the record for the benefit of the public. So.
And could I, Mr. Chairman, I agree with the attorney. And basically on Dog Island, they don't have public water, so
That's
if you
correct.
don't grant this variance and these people don't have nowhere to put a well, then they don't have no water, and there is no public water on Dog Island, so.
That's correct.
I've always been against putting these wells next to septic tanks, worried about people becoming sick and other things, but in this particular instance that we're dealing with Dog Island, they have no alternative.
And
So
I
I'd like to
understand
put
they're
that on
going
the
back the way
record
they
also.
were, aren't they? They're just replacing specifically what they missed.
That's correct.
Okay, y'all, let's go back and amend them, this last motion for that purpose.
I don't think so, Commissioner, Chairman Lockley. We just need to get the factual basis in the record. I mean, I know that each of you have been briefed by staff individually, and you're aware of those facts. I just wanted it on the record.
Okay. On the record, they doing it for the well purpose. Okay, go ahead.
Number 4, we have a recommendation for approval. It was a unanimous vote. Consideration of a request for a 25-foot variance from the well to septic tank to meet the minimum state requirement. The property is described as Lot 2, Block 4, Unit 1, unrecorded Dog Island subdivision, 938 Gulf Shore Drive, Dog Island. Request submitted by Randy Cannon, agent for Michael and Robin Nix.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Master, second by Commissioner Jones.
Okay,
This is also for the well purpose. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That passed unanimously.
okay, number 5, we have a recommendation for approval. It's unanimous. Consideration of a request for a 25-foot variance from well to septic tank to meet this minimum state requirement. The property is described as Lot 111, Unit 1, unrecorded Dog Island, 512 Gulf Shore Drive, Dog Island. Request submitted by Randy Cannon, agent for Barton and Shelley Milligan.
So moved. Second.
Motion on the floor by Commissioner Master, second by Commissioner Jones. This is for the well purpose. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That passed unanimously.
Okay, number 6, we have a recommendation for approval. It's unanimous. Consideration of a request for a 25-foot variance from well to septic to meet the minimum state requirement. The property is described as Lot 15, unrecorded subdivision, 886 Gulf Shore Drive, Dog Island, Franklin County, Florida. Request submitted by Roseanne Wood and Peter Chris, owners.
So moved.
Second.
Motion on the floor by Commissioner Masters, second by Commissioner Parrish and Bo. It's a well purpose. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That passed unanimously.
Okay. Number 7, recommendation for approval. Unanimous. Consideration of a request for a 25-foot variance from well to septic to meet the state requirement. The property is described as Lot 16, unrecorded Dog Island, 882 Gulf Shore Drive, Dog Island, Franklin County, Florida. Request submitted by Richard Great, owner.
So moved. Second.
Motion on the floor by Commissioner Jones, second by Commissioner Master. Another well purpose. It messed up all them wells, huh? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All, any opposed? That passed unanimously.
Okay, number 8, we have a recommendation for approval, unanimous with the retaining wall being flush with the neighboring retaining walls and rock placement on the waterward side of the retaining wall. Consideration of a request to construct a vinyl retaining seawall with a 15-foot wing wall on the west side and a 12-foot wing wall on the east side. The property is described as 193 Harbor Circle, Alligator Point, Franklin County, Florida. Request submitted by Larry Joe Colson, agent for Bruce and Alejandra Stinson.
So move.
Second.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Bo, second by Commissioner Jones. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That passed unanimously.
Okay. We have a recommendation for approval, unanimous, consideration of a request to construct a vinyl retaining seawall. The property is described as Lot 5, Treasure Cove, 1211 East Gulf Beach Drive, St. George Island, Franklin County, Florida. Request submitted by Larry Joe Colson, agent for the Carroll M. Grates Trust.
So moved.
Second.
Motion on the floor by Commissioner Jones, second by Commissioner Parrish. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That pass unanimous. Okay,
That's me
going to the
again.
planning and zoning now. That could be Ms. Abraham Kelly with planning and zoning report.
See if I can get this slid over a little bit. Okay, this morning we come requesting a public hearing. We have a recommendation for approval for a public hearing. It was unanimous. Consideration of a request for a land use change from single-family home industry and single-family residential district to commercial recreation, and a rezoning from R4 and R1 single-family home industry and residential to C3 commercial recreation of a 3.23 acre parcel, also known as 889 US Highway 98, East Point, Franklin County, Florida. Request submitted by Chester Creamer, applicant.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Masters, second by Commissioner Jones. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Pass unanimous.
Okay. Number 2, we have a recommendation for approval for a commercial site plan review. It was unanimous. Consideration of a request for a commercial site plan review to construct a 5,000 square foot metal building that will be used as lawn, landscaping, and fencing business, located in Section 31, Township 8, Range 6 West, also known as 19 Jefferson Street, East Point, Franklin County, Florida. Request submitted by Jeff Betzel. He's the applicant.
Mr. Chairman,
Mm-hmm.
question. Amy,
Please.
is this property already zoned for this use?
It is.
Okay. Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Jones, second by two of them, Harris and Master. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That pass unanimous.
Okay, we have a sketch plat approval. It's a recommendation for approval, unanimous. Consideration of a request for sketch plat approval of an 18.5 acre parcel lying in Section 34, Township 8 South, Range 8 West, located in Apalachicola, Franklin County, Florida. Request submitted by Thomas Schuler, applicant.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Parrish, second by Commissioner Jones. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That pass unanimous.
Thank you very much.
That concludes you. Keep up the good work, Ms. Kelly. Next on the agenda will be, so you wanna break it down? Gonna leave it there. Mr. John Solomon, TDC Administrator.
Morning, Commissioners. John Solomon, TDC Director. Just have a couple of updates we need to go real quick. One is the MOU that the TDC and the county has with 2K Web Group concerning our credit card payments for online advertising. The TDC board voted at the last meeting to approve and come to the county commission to increase the account limit on the card to $20,000 from $10,000. This does not change the amount that 2K Web Group can use throughout the year. It just changes how much is on the credit limit on the card. Some of the overlaps of advertising has, causing where it's not, our Google ads aren't getting paid for in a timely manner. Nothing the fault of the clerk's office, it's just the way they set up. Some months are higher than other months. So they voted, and they have a MOU in front of y'all today updating that, we would need the approval of the county commission to have Ms. Marcia sign it, and also the TDC chair.
Well, do they have a limit on how much they can spend?
Currently, right now, they do have a currently overall limit of over $100,000, but that doesn't change.
No, I mean on the car.
Right now, currently, it's 10,000.
I mean, it's 10,000, but I'm talking about on when they doing when they paying off, what the limit?
We're talking about moving it to 20, Mr.
Yeah, moving it from 10,000 to 20,000, the limit.
From 10,000 to 20,000.
Oh, that's gonna be the amount you're paying?
Well, that'd be the most that could be paid.
Okay,
Charged, yes, sir.
Real quick, I got one question.
go ahead.
Madam Clerk, y'all, this MOU, everybody agrees with this MOU? I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Parrish, second by Commissioner Master. All in favor? All opposed? That passed unanimous.
One other thing that I do have, that I spoke to Attorney Schuler and Mr. Marone about this week, we have HDTV is coming in a couple of weeks to film one of their TV shows here in Franklin County. And there is not a permit process or a payment to have a permit to film in Franklin County, but they do need something for their file stating that. I would like to ask the board if y'all could maybe instruct Mr. Marone if he could draft a letter saying that there is not a permit requirement for filming in Franklin County.
Change of the vote.
You have reviewed this,
We,
Michael?
we have spoken about this request, myself and John Solomon. We've had to face this question in the past, and the county has no permit requirement for someone to film on anywhere in the county. I mean, that maybe in Hollywood, California, or Hollywood, Florida, but not in Franklin County. Now, there is an issue coming up. I'm dealing with Director Fonda Davis concerning someone wanting to film on county-owned property. So we need to get something from them showing that they've got insurance and that they release us from liability. But I think that's a different question than what Mr. Solomon's asking right now.
I'll make
I
a
would
motion to
recommend
direct
approval.
county staff to write the letter for Mr. Solomon.
I got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Parrish, second by Commissioner Master. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That passed unanimous.
And one final thing to update from the last meeting where I saw y'all when we were waiting for approval from Visit Florida. We were approved. Visit Florida gave us a $174,000 fully reimbursable grant to advertise Franklin County as being open for business.
Good deal.
Okay,
Excellent.
that's good.
Yep,
That's great.
yep.
And that will be all I have for today. Today was just an update, so I appreciate y'all fitting me in.
Thank you.
Thank you, John, very
Appreciate it.
much.
Y'all have a good day.
Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Yep.
Next on the agenda will be Mr. Doug Creamer, Chairman, Wing Board of the Directors, EMS update.
How's everybody doing today?
Good to
morning.
see you.
Yeah, it's still on.
Getting tired? I got tired just watching y'all. At our last meeting,
Let me get your name for the record.
Doug Kramer,
Okay.
Chairman of the Board, Williams Hospital Board. At our last hospital board meeting, the CEO, Mr. Cannington, and the EMS director asked the board for approval to purchase a new ambulance. The Williams board has granted that approval, and we're here to ask you to grant the approval since you have to okay the purchase.
Okay. What we decided? I guess, where this money supposed to come
Are you all asking for the funds to come from the healthcare trust fund or?
That's up to the commission.
I can give a little insight into that. I worked with HD last Tuesday, and what this is, as I understand it, is the purchase of a ambulance unit. However, this is a succession plan. This one unit, if I understand it correctly, amalgamates all the systems for the next 5 years.
What?
And I've learned that some of these ambulance units, you can actually change the box. You can remove the box and get a new chassis. And so the plan is to add vigor to the ambulance system with one unit, and then rotate through the system over the next 5 years as one unit. And I think that's a good thought. And you can imagine that the health of our people is our most valuable asset, and we need to be accessible. And ambulances make us that way. That's what this does, I think.
If I may, Doug, I think it'll help if you explain to them the current mileage that we have.
Indeed.
Yourself, or Louis, EMS
Louis
director,
would have, I don't have that, the mileage of the units we have now.
and the years.
We currently, is Louis here?
Okay, good.
We put about 60,000 miles a year on each of our primary units. We have 3, one for Appalachia, one for East Point, one for the Lanark Carabel area. East Point services, East Point, St. George Island. Lifespan is about 5 years or 300,000 miles max. We're developing a plan to make sure that all of our primary units are up to date and current as we can keep them and be physically, feasible for the citizens of the county. If we order one today, it's probably gonna be a minimum of 9 months before we get it in. It takes that long to get the chassis. I don't think it's the box. Commissioner Bolt's right. We do have a 10-year replacement plan that we've put together. Eventually, what our long goal is to maintain 3 primary ambulances and 2 backup units, which would be some of our ambulances that we move from primary to backup. And we are going to have one, as soon as possible to get this process. And we'll be coming back to you periodically asking you either to buy a chassis that we can remount or to buy a new unit, depending on the need at the time in our schedule. Some of the boxes, it's not economically feasible to remount because of the age of the box. And so that would require a complete ambulance. Louis could tell you, do you have the mileage on the units we've got now?
Yes, sir.
Step up here. This is Louis, our director.
Richard Lewis, Weems EMS Director. Currently, our 3 primary trucks, we have a 2016 Chevy that has approximately 102,000, the last time I checked as of yesterday. We have a 2015 Chevy, which is a Lanark truck. It has 115,000 miles on it. And the truck that we're looking to replace right now is a 2013 Chevy, and it currently has 280,000 miles on it.
Ooh.
And we put on approximately 5,000 miles per month per truck.
Works out to 60,000 miles a year per unit. The 2013 chassis or unit that we wanting to move back has an 04 box on it, so that box will not be remountable. It wouldn't be cost effective to try to remount that box. That's why we're asking for a new unit, and we need your approval today for that.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question before we get that. Louis, if I can I ask you a couple of questions?
Yes, sir.
How many ambulances do we presently have?
We have a total of 5 ambulances that are
Okay.
running.
Okay. And if we get another one, is one of those old ones gonna be decommissioned, or what?
Yes, sir. Our oldest one, the one's in the worst shape, we will decommission that one.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to clarify and make sure, because I believe I heard Mr. Creamer say that you wanna have 3 primaries and 2 backups.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's, I'm just clarifying, make sure I heard right. Thank you, Louis.
Yes, sir.
Now, is we going out in this in the outdoor, if we get it? Is it coming out the hospital fund?
Yes, sir. If it comes out of the healthcare trust fund, there's just over $3.5 million in there, so that would come from the capital side fund.
Come from the capital.
In his
you can use the trust fund to do this with. I don't think there should be any problem. Mr. Schuler, do you have a thought on that?
Well, I've had 30 seconds to listen to this conversation, so
This ain't your first rodeo.
it is not my first rodeo, but I also don't have perfect recall. I think the finance clerk is right that we have purchased ambulances in the past. We can't fund the operations of the ambulance, but we can purchase capital equipment for the hospital. So I think this would fall within the ambit of a capital outlay purchase. So I think it's close enough for government work when it comes to the healthcare trust fund and your interlocal agreements.
Pleasure to vote.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Jones, second by Commissioner Massey. To approve it. Discussion?
This is
Let me-
budget neutral, isn't it, essentially? Okay.
Let me ask you a question. We gonna approve this one, but, is y'all checked into the, like, I see some of our department, they go into leasing, the equipment. I don't know whether it be feasible for the ambulance or what.
We looked at that, Mr. Chairman, and that was not cost effective for an ambulance. The companies that make that available, it's not a good plan for us. I don't have the dollars and cents in, at the top of my head, but we did look at that and we determined that was not
Wasn't feasible.
a monetarily feasible way to go with the taxpayers' money. We just,
Okay, no problem.
Mr. Chairman, under discussion before we vote. Mr. Creamer, speaking for myself, I think I'd like to see that plan that you're discussing, that y'all have come up with, just so we'll be informed and know kind of, the 5-year plan or whatever you.
it's a 10-year plan. I'll make sure each of you
Yeah.
get a copy of that
Yeah,
for your records, and because we will be, as we follow this plan, we're gonna be coming back to you and asking you for resources.
that's fine, yeah.
And, that's just gonna be part of it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Go get your ambulance.
Thank you very much. Thank you. One other thing, the hospital board has, or feels like we might need some outside support consulting. And I would ask that y'all allow Michael Morone to look for us a company or a firm that can provide that service to us.
Okay,
I would ask you to include Attorney Schuler too. Call him Michael if you want to, but, yeah, definitely need any help.
this something like a training?
Yes, sir. It would,
Okay.
we're going,
Yeah.
as y'all are aware, we're going into a building program, or
Yeah.
we got a lot of stuff going on, and I don't want to wait until we need the help to try to decide, to try to find it. I'd like to have it in place.
I think that's good. Mr.
Appreciate
Durham.
that, Mr. Chairman.
I think it's real good, cause we go through the same, when we start, we go through the Florida Association. I don't know whether they got one for this, but
And,
They
Mr.
might.
Chairman, any recommendation, I guess y'all are gonna get, gonna come back to us anyway, correct?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely, yes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Jones, second by Commissioner Mass. Yeah, that's a good thing. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That passed unanimous.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And as I'll reiterate, anytime y'all have a question or a concern, get with me. We try to be as open and keep y'all as informed as we possibly can, because we work at your behest, we work for y'all.
I spent all day Saturday with you.
Say what?
I said, I spent all day Saturday with you.
Yeah, you good, you can cook hog skins. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Keep up the good work. Next we got Miss Marcia Johnson, clerk of the court.
I don't have a report today.
Okay. Next, we got Mr. Allen Pierce. Thank you, Ms. John. Restore coordinator.
Okay, I'm number Ryan, we might be able to move through some of them pretty quickly. The first item is about Alligator Point Road, and I really wrote that in there for the record, as well as the people on Alligator Point, so I'm not gonna read the whole thing, it's self-explanatory. Just want you to know that the temporary road is in for what we've done. We've made a request to FEMA for approximately $102,000, including $22,000 that M Construction gave me an invoice for. As you may recall, the M Construction was a company who volunteered, or offered to go down there with their equipment and use their equipment to put the temporary road in, so we're trying to get them reimbursed. Ultimately, you have another list of 8 items to make that a better temporary road, a total cost of about $239,000. We have put that into FEMA. I've talked to this morning, I had a phone call from Jay Armstrong. We were working through some permitting issues on the FEMA side to try and get that temporary road completed. Ultimately, my goal was to get a temporary road in there before the end of hurricane season. I'm sorry, before the beginning of hurricane season, June 1st, so we hope to have a paved road in there. That's my goal. We will see whether we can accomplish that or not. So that's really, unless there's questions about item 1, I just don't need to read all that. It's there for the record. Item number 2, because when Pam was standing here, we had a deadline of last Friday to put in all our projects, so I put in a permanent relocation cost on Alligator Drive of $10 million. I did this without having any real idea what the cost is, but I also had to put an alternative project because I want to remind the board and the public that we do not yet have all the private property necessary to rebuild this permanent road. And so I had to state in there that if worst case scenario, we put the road back where it is. That's not what we want, but we have to put a road on property we own. And so, you know, we're still moving forward, but I did list an alternative project. So unless there's questions about item number 2, that's item number 2. Item number 3 is really, I put it in there just so the public and really the people in Alligator Point can see in writing from DEP a brief synopsis of the conflict that DEP has in dealing with Alligator Drive. So I'm going to read this. This is coming from DEP, and this is a statement that I asked them to make because FEMA wanted to know, has DEP prohibited us from putting the road back? Are they requiring us to relocate the road? Well, they're not requiring us. By state law, they can't require in a definitive prohibition because it's a public road. But they do it in a way that makes it so difficult you can't build it back. So I'm just going to read this in the record just because I think it's important. This is coming from DEP, item number 3. The existing road, Alligator Drive, is a major structure and is located seaward of the department's 30-year erosion projection of the seasonal high water, or the 30-year erosion line. The existing damaged roadway is approximately 20 feet wide, which is less than the 24 feet width normally required for 2-lane roads. The department cannot issue a permit for a new major structure. So going from 20 feet to 24 feet in their interpretation is a new structure. So they can't issue a permit for a new structure seaward of the 30-year line unless it fits the rebuilding criteria of the law, meaning it can't be expanded. So that's the conflict right there. The construction of a new roadway in this location which exceeds the capacity of the footprint of existing road damage must be located further landward and landward of the 30-year erosion line. So they tell us they don't make us relocate it, but at the same time they won't permit a 24-foot wide road in that location. So that's why Dewberry has been in this stalled position. We can't get a permit for what we want and what we need, but we don't have land to move it. So that's why the last 2 years we've made no progress. And all DEP does is they keep asking for additional information as if there's some magic solution out there. Well, there is no magic solution except relocate the road because the engineers can't design a substandard road. So I just want to put that in the record. That's the conflict we've been in and will continue to be in if we can't relocate the road. And it's going to be a problem.
How many you showed up from getting them houses?
Well, I'm going to go to item number 4 then, because that's where we talked about where we're at now. And I'm going to ask for a motion on this one because things have just changed this morning when I was on the phone. So item number 4, Ms. Sarah Kelty has provided me a draft HMGP application for land acquisition for property in Alligator Point. The draft application is some 240 pages, so I've not attached the draft. It is only a draft that I'm reviewing. At this time, 17 property owners have indicated they're willing to receive an offer to sell the land, and those 17 are 5 vacant lots and 12 with structures. While I support the acquisition of any property in Alligator Point, and so does the state of Florida, at this time, these 17 parcels are not all in the future right-of-way. So there are still some 8 to 10 lots that will need to be acquired to relocate Alligator Drive. But this is a great start. So I am going to ask you for a motion to approve this draft application and signature by the chairman when it's finalized. There are a couple of things that I want to share with you. One, that this draft application talks about $3.5 million of approximately estimated cost for acquiring these 70 parcels, of which by this draft there's an $800,000 non-federal match or local match. The state of Florida is gonna find that $800,000, so at this point, there is not gonna be a cost to the county for acquiring these 17 lots. That's item number one. Item number two, we hope that this is the first application and not the only application. We hope there's a snowball effect. But we want to get this application in, even though it doesn't represent all the lots that we need to buy. So the idea is to get this in and see if we can acquire these lots, and then maybe the other 8 or 10 will follow suit. So that's item number two. Item number three, admittedly, this is a problem, but I've pointed out, the draft application, because normally when you acquire a property, you leave it in its natural vegetative state, you knock down structures, you leave it natural. Well, we're not gonna leave these lots natural. We're going to put a road through there. And so the application has to be amended to show that. And when I left the room this morning, I was Frank McComb calling me, and I explained to him, look, we gotta make that, you can tell me one thing, but I need to see it in writing, that we know we have permission to put a road in there. And so they're gonna be revising the application. But with those items listed, if I could have board action to have the chairman sign this draft application when it is complete, because they're eager to get it in the system.
Pleasure to vote.
So moved.
Motion on the floor by Commissioner Burke, second by Commissioner Master. Any more discussion?
Just support here. I share your frustration with regard to how DEP is tying our hands. And I'm wondering if just, maybe it's just words, but it just seems to me that we need perhaps an affirmation from this commission that we're doing all we can to be good stewards of the people who live here. And that we need some waiver relief from DEP, maybe a workshop or something that we go, that has some teeth in it beyond the words that they have given us so far.
Commissioner, what I encourage you to, you're an elected official, I encourage you to call up there and see if you can set an appointment as an elected official to people.
Sure.
Because the staff has been down this road so many times.
Okay.
It's a trench.
Okay.
I mean, I say that, I mean,
Yeah,
I don't
I
want
know.
to take away from the power of the board, but I think you need to hear the situation so you can be,
Sure. Yeah.
that's what I encourage. There's no really need for a workshop down here with DEP staff on an issue that's specific to that one little area.
Okay. Well, I've dealt with some of the personalities up there from my own private property, and so I know what you're dealing with.
Okay. I mean,
Okay, I'll follow. Yeah.
Item number 5.
Wait a minute.
I'm sorry.
All
We
in fa-
need to vote. We vote that.
all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Pass unanimous.
Thank you. Item number 5, recommendation on Restore Act consultant responses. As the board is aware, the only one firm responded to the advertised Restore Act consultants. That was Langton Consulting. Langton Consulting currently are the Restore consultants for Gulf, Taylor, Jefferson, and Walton counties. I have spoken extensively with Gulf County, with Mr. Warren Yeager specifically, and they are entirely satisfied with Langton Consulting. Langton Consulting is aware and made the statement in their RFP. Langton Consulting acknowledges and accepts that all fees to be paid to the firm will be funded exclusively from the Restore Act federal grant funds. So their fee structure should not be a burden on the county cash flow. I have spoken extensively to Ms. Melissa Boudreau and to Mr. Langton, and with their successful Restore experience in our surrounding counties, I believe they are well qualified to assist Franklin County. Their proposed contract, which is attached to my report, does not have a fee schedule, so this is something that we need to negotiate. So I recommend the board enter into negotiations with Langton Consulting, and that would be with the attorney's assistance.
So move to direct staff to begin negotiations with Langston Consulting to be our Restore coordinator.
Second.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Harris, second by Commissioner Jones. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Pass unanimous.
All right. Item number 6, board action to sign an FDOT grant for the remaining funding of the airport master plan update. There are 2 funding sources for the master plan, the FAA, which the board signed in August of 2018 for some $282,000, and then this final component from FDOT for $80,000 for a total cost of airport update of $362,250. Master plan updates are required by FAA, so which is why they provide so much of the funding. So I need action to sign the second piece of this funding.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Parrish, second by Commissioner Jones. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Pass unanimous.
Number 7, back in November, the board heard requests from a group of citizens for a review of the county's response to during Hurricane Michael. As I previously reported, I met with the group and the scope of work was developed. At a previous meeting, the County Emergency Manager's Office provided their own post-Michael assessment and a response to the scope of work created by the citizens. The board had directed that I obtain quotes from an outside consultant to make an independent review of the county's hurricane response. And to that end, I have attempted to obtain quotes from 2 qualified firms. I contacted DSI, which had previously done work in Franklin County at the Emergency Management Office, and another emergency consulting firm, AS360, a firm which has done work in Gulf County. Only AS360 has responded. I spoke several times with DSI representatives initially, and they said they were interested in the work, but after several additional efforts, they never gave me a quote. So I have a quote from AS360 to complete the scope of work developed by the citizen group. The proposed fee is slightly below the board's bid threshold of $10,000, and I didn't give you the exact amount because I didn't know if you wanted to go out for quotes, you know, then I didn't want these people's price to be out there in the public sector. But AS360, their lead person will be Hank Christensen, who is the former, he's retired, he's like me, he's a consultant now. He was with Escambia County during all the hurricanes in 2000, 2004, and 5 hurricane seasons, so he's well qualified, and I actually remember him from years past. But they are interested in doing the work if you all are interested in proceeding with just 1 quote. I did attempt to get 2, but I failed in that. So I need direction from you all what you want to do.
Ready to the vote?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Jones, second by Commissioner Mass.
And then I will tell you, so you're accurate, let me just tell you the exact quote so you know what it is. It's $9,909.72. $9,909.72. And that'll come out of professional services. I've checked with Aaron Griffin.
All opposed? That pass unanimous.
Okay, item number 8. Update from Pot 2 meeting I attended in Gulf County on March 12th. Pot 2 is the common name for the BP funds managed by the Gulf Council, the group of 5 states and 6 federal agencies affected by the BP oil spill. Pot 2 funds can only be spent on environmental restoration that benefits the Gulf of Mexico. Franklin County had been the recipient of some of those funds, though admittedly for projects the county did not initiate. And some of those some of the $10 million the state had previously spent in shelling the Apalachicola Bay was Pot 2 funds. Some of the wetland restoration that has been done in Tate's Hill State Forest was Pot 2 funds. The living shoreline built along the Apalachicola Estuarine Research Office in East Point was Pot 2 funds. I went to this meeting to see what additional Pot 2 funds are intended for Franklin County. Again, these projects have to meet a federal guideline of having a benefit to the Gulf of Mexico. At this time, Tate's Hill National or State Forest will receive some additional wetland restoration. On behalf of the board, I made a pitch for additional funds for oyster reef restoration, for dune restoration because of Hurricane Michael, and artificial reef restoration. I was advised that artificial reef restoration is possible, but probably not until the next round of funding, which is 5 to 7 years away. In all these funding cycles, including the County Restore, is over a 15-year period, so there are going to be several iterations of this. The oyster reef restoration and dune restoration was taken under advisement, so I hope in a couple of months we'll hear back on some of those ideas. That's what happened on that meeting. Number 9, board action to approve final change order for $5,130 for Pika construction on the relocation of Gulf Shore Boulevard. This completes the work on the project, and FEMA reimbursement will be requested. The funds will go back into the Ballpoint Trust Fund.
Ready to the vote?
So moved.
Second.
Motion on the floor by Commissioner Parrish, second by Commissioner Bowe. All in favor? All opposed? That pass unanimous.
Board action to approve the scope of work for $18,750 for Wood Partners, providing opinions of probable cost of reconstruction of Island View Park. The fees of this opinion will have been provided by FDP to come out of the Operation and Maintenance Fund for the park. The county will provide the probable cost of FEMA, and if FEMA obligates the funds to a PW, then the county will go out to bid to reconstruct the park. It's going to be my recommendation that we utilize Wood Partners in all aspects of the reconstruction of the park, since they were the general contractors the first time. If the board does utilize Wood Partners for future services, then we will have to select Wood Partners through a process approved by FEMA, but we are not there yet. Board action to approve the scope of work as submitted by Wood Partners.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Parrish, second by Commissioner Jones. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That pass unanimous.
Commissioner Byrd, let you know that they plan to be out there Thursday, to begin their assessment. And as I told you when Fonda was here, that we put in $2.5 million as a holding place. They think that as long as the pilings and all that stuff are secure, that we could probably reconstruct the park for less than $1 million. So that's where we're headed. And that's the end of my report.
Okay, keep up the good work. Next on the agenda be Mr. Michael Malone, County Coordinator.
Commissioners, item number one, at your last meeting, I informed the board that the county has received a contract from FDOT to design the resurfacing improvements on 1.553 miles of County Road 30A, which is west of Apalachicola, from Gulf County line to 13 Mile Road. This is part of the SCRAP program that Franklin County is entitled to apply for since we enacted final 1-cent local option gas tax. This contract for $111,762 will pay an engineering firm to design the improvements. Construction funds will become available in the 2021 fiscal year. The board adopted a resolution authorizing the chairman to sign the contract with FDOT and authorize the planning department to advertise for an engineering firm to design these improvements. Upon further review, the estimate for the design of the resurfacing of County Road 30A is beneath the threshold in the Consultants Competitive Negotiations Act, which the maximum there is $325, that requires advertising. This means the board can just award the design contract to the county's engineers and avoid going through the selection process. Board action to award the design to the county's engineers, Dewberry Incorporated.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Parrish, second by Commissioner Jones. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, that pass unanimous.
Item 2, listed below are your 3 FDOT grant applications for board approval. These applications have to be submitted to FDOT by the end of the week. Board action to approve these grant applications and authorize the chairman's signature on each application. If you need me to read all 3, I would, but we've kind of been down all 3 already, so.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Parrish, second by Commissioner Master. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, that pass unanimous.
We already addressed item 3. Item 4, recently, Mr. Mark Currington, your county planner, was contacted by representatives from the Florida Public Archaeology Network and Askew Institute for Multidisciplinary Center, which is located at the University of West Florida. The institute would like the board to authorize a letter of support, which I attach, to designate the Florida Panhandle, which is from McCullough, Liberty, and Gadsden counties westward, entire Panhandle, as a Maritime National Heritage Area. This designation is similar to a National Historic designation, and there is no cost to the county. However, at a minimum, this designation would promote this area to a wider audience, but staff can also add it to grants that might get the county additional points. Board action to authorize the chairman's signature on the letter of support.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Master, second by Commissioner Jones. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, that pass unanimous.
On the afternoon of Tuesday, March 12, I received an email from Senator Mumford's staff requesting an immediate rank in priority order of all county and city legislative budget requests for the 2019 legislative session. This was totally different to what I was told at the first legislative delegation that was held here on Wednesday, January 30th. Based on the list sent to me by Senator Mumford's staff, I ranked the projects in the order, as you see the list below, and forwarded to the Senator's staff by the Wednesday, March 13th deadline. Senator Mumford moved the request for a new emergency management building from this list and added to Hurricane Michael funding list. The Senator thinks that there is a better chance of funding from that list. Board action to ratify the legislative budget request ranking submitted to Senator Mumford's staff. Do you need me to read the list?
Second.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Parrish, second by Commissioner Jones. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, that pass unanimous.
Item 6, commissioners informed the board that there were no applications submitted from the advertisement for a certified building official that ran in the local paper and was posted on Florida Association of Counties website. I recommend running a new advertisement for building inspector. This inspector would have enough qualifications that would allow him to seek his building official provisional certification in 6 months, then take and pass the test for the building official standard certification within an additional 6 months. If approved, I will run this advertisement in the local newspaper and post it on the Florida Association of Counties website. Board action to authorize the advertisement for building inspector.
So
Basically,
moved.
oh, I'm sorry.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Parrish,
Second.
second by
Discussion.
Commissioner Jones. Discussion.
Yes, sir. Michael, will this also include, and I'm not trying to say anything I shouldn't say, but if we get another county staff person, they go through everything it takes to get certified to be a building official, is there an amount of time that, for what we're putting out, that they should be serving in that position?
I've already asked my favorite attorney that question, and he
Okay.
will work basically in a labor contract, if that's what you're.
Well, I'm not trying to bog
asking
down
for.
what we're doing, it's just a concern I have, and I
Yes,
feel
we-
this is the best time to bring it up.
We ready to talk
And I
about
agree
it?
with that.
Yes. And also, I think we could create a job description for this inspector that would allow him to do more things than just a building official. He'd be the board's employee, basically.
That's right, okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That passes unanimously.
Item 7, Mr. Tim Center, the Chief Executive Officer of Capital Area Community Action Agency, I'll refer to it just as Community Action, notified staff that they are ready to purchase permanent housing for 2 Lime Rock Fire victim families that might not otherwise qualify for CDBG funding housing. Once approved, the vendor will produce, transport, and set up the home in approximately 30 days. One home is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath for $44,900.38. The second is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath for $39,981.88. More information on homes is attached to my report. Board action to authorize the purchase of these 2 homes for the 2 Lime Rock victim families from the donated funds currently managed by Community Action.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Masters, second by Commissioner Parrish. Discussion on this.
Yes, sir?
Michael, we need to, have Miss Deborah Belcher get with Tim Centers where he's purchased these homes
Yes, sir?
and see if she can't get a better deal
Same
than what she's
prices,
been
okay.
doing. Yeah.
I will.
Is these homes or trailers?
Mobile home.
Mobile home.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they're obviously zone 3 and
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's a good price.
Be her $40,000, $30,000.
Yeah.
that's what I know. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That passes unanimously. Yeah, you get 2 for 1 for what you.
Item 8, Commissioner, staff has been notified by Duke Energy that's part of their care and maintenance of the transmission infrastructure. Crews will be pruning and removing trees along Duke Energy's Crawfordville to Port St. Joe 230 kV transmission power line. It's gonna be approximately 60 miles. Maps of the corridor are attached. Not really, I had to provide a link because it's a lot of small maps, but that's just how they sent it to me. This service will be performed by qualified line clearance arborists and supervised by a licensed arborist. Duke Energy will notify all affected landowners prior to any work commencing on their property. This work is scheduled to begin within the next few weeks.
Mr. Chairman, real quick on that issue. Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
they're not spraying.
No, sir, they're removing any trees.
I'm just putting that out there for the public. This
Yes.
is not a big spraying project.
Yeah.
Brought people to our meetings complaining about the spray running into our bays and our waterways. So I just wanted to bring that out.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for reading my mind.
Yes. Basically protecting the transmission lines is what they're doing by removing trees and pruning. And finally, I was directed at last meeting to research neighboring small county permit fees and present a new schedule of permit fees for the board's approval. Miss Amy Ham Kelly and Miss Whitney Barfield are still in the process of gathering the necessary information and should have a new schedule of permit fees ready for your review at your April 16th regular meeting. And that's my report, Commissioners.
Anybody got anything for Mike? Keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir.
Next on the agenda be Mr. Thomas Schuler.
Yes, sir. I did not submit a written report, but I do have one item for the board to consider taking action on. Last Tuesday, on March the 12th, I received an email from Mr. Mark Currington, your planning and zoning director, and he was at an FDOT workshop recently, and they had mentioned to him that FDOT is recommending to small counties that you consider adopting a right-of-way ordinance to regulate cell towers. They specifically mentioned the Leon County ordinance. Mark does not have a recommendation. He said he's providing this to me for my information, but if FDOT is recommending that we consider this, I'm requesting board approval to look into this matter and come back with a recommendation for further board action.
Pleasure to vote.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Parrish, second by Commissioner Jones. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That passed unanimously.
And then just an information item for the board on the negotiations with the Supervisor of Elections Office. I know all of you know this, 'cause I sent the email out, but just for the record and the public, there are 2 additional years remaining on the current lease the county has with Mr. Arnold, and he is required under that lease to make repairs to the property. I've met with he and the supervisor, and we have agreed to a list of repairs that need to be made that are his obligation. There's a different category of improvements, which I don't think he's required to make under the lease, but nonetheless, he has agreed to move forward in hiring people to make those repairs now, and I have committed to him that we will begin to negotiate potentially a new lease term, maybe beginning at the next budget year. But I don't have any specifics at this time, just want to give you that general update, and that's it for me. Does the board have any questions?
Anybody got anything for Mr. Schuler? Commissioner comment?
I just had a question for all of us as commissioners. As we deliberate on going to the legislative day in Tallahassee next week, should we discuss just briefly what common subject we want to approach the legislators with on behalf of our county? Should we all be on the same page? This is rather new to me, and I wanted to know your thoughts.
I would think it'd be the same things we presented at the legislative delegation meeting.
Yeah,
That's what I would think.
That's usually what we do, like, whatever we told Senator. It's just with the senator this time,
Okay.
and we just, we usually go in there and ask them to fight a little harder for that, if they're gonna fight. Sometimes we get it, sometimes we don't. According to how good you know.
Mr. Chairman, one comment to Commissioner Bolts. I also need to push for some funding for the sheriff, because without funding, his project ain't going anywhere, because this county cannot afford to fund that, as I stated earlier when the sheriff was here, so there's nothing I'm saying now that I didn't say when he was present, but this county cannot afford to do what the federal government can do and the state government can't do in addressing the drug issues affecting the whole country. We just don't have the assets to be able to move forward. So if the legislature and the state wants to chip in and give the sheriff the money, the funding for this rehab center that he's wanting to do, then it'll happen. If it doesn't, pretty much not gonna happen, because we don't have the resources. So that's just something else that you could throw in there to the legislators as you meet with them, that, you know, we're willing to work with them on a building that we presently own. But other than that, this small rural county cannot fund this drug rehab. My heart goes out to the people.
Sure.
I wanna help them, but we can't bankrupt Franklin County government trying to do that. So that's just something else I'll throw out there that we may want to speak to your legislative delegation about.
What about the Emergency Operations Center, that 50-year-old structure? Should we not be thinking about that at the top of the
Like Commissioner Jones said, that's part of the list, sir, that we submitted
That
to
was the
Senator
Montford
Mumford.
list.
I will even go beyond that. I'll tell y'all, like Commissioner Parrish just said, he referred to the legislative delegation. Remember now, we don't have a representative. I don't think the election for Mr. Bashirs will be until after you guys are there. So an extra effort to reach out to other representatives to help any bill that Senator Mumford might bring to the floor. We'll need something on the House side, so, you know, reach out to some other, with the same list that Commissioner Jones referred to, but we're gonna need a little extra help, because we don't have a representative right now, because, like I said, you know, that seat is still vacant.
I tell you what, it's a good thing. I don't believe it's gonna work, or what Tony Shaft Smith talking about. It's a good thing, and they need it. I mean, it's not only the gentleman family was affected. It's a lot of families, who's mine, a lot of people more got family members affected with this problem. It's just a problem all over the world. And if he get it, he'll make history. 'Cause I checked around, and none in these counties, and they need it. They need it bad. I mean, but when they get it, it's still gonna be up to the people to accept it, 'cause you can have all kind of billing, but you got to be ready to stop. All right, any more Commissioner comments? Meeting adjourned.
We did make it by 12.
Yeah.
What day is that?